What's up, guys? We're coming at you live. Legends Never Die podcast. Today we're doing something a little different. Rained out of work today, me and Frank, so we're at home a little early. I'm studying for a test I'm about to go take at 5 o'clock in about 2 hours. And I just figured I'd go over a couple questions on the exam, the short answer questions, and this would be a good way to study and teach the viewers a little business. This is a strategic management class, so you could take this into effect in many aspects of any business model, any company, whether it's your own or whether it's one you're working at, want to work at one day, or you're just studying a specific industry to see if you want to jump into something like that. A brief description of what I'm going to teach y'all today is going to be the industrial organizational model and the resource-based model of strategic business. So this is basically like going to teach you ways to go about forming a strategy or ways of entering a new market, different things. So first off, the industrial organization model, which you'll start off by studying your external environment. That's like a broad scope of basically the United States, and you're looking at what's popular and what's trending or what you enjoy yourself and all that. Then you locate an industry within the external environment with a high potential of returns. So whatever you think suits you best, like an industry, automotive industry, the car manufacturer, phone manufacturing industry, anything like that with high potential for returns. Then you form a strategy. So form a strategy for this industry, very simple. Go about it however you want. Then develop and require the needed assets and skills. So it takes you all the way till step 4 to figure out what assets and skills you need. You've already chose your industry. This is the main difference between the two models. And lastly, you want to implement the strategy through the firm's strengths. So basically, this is an outside-in approach. You start outside with a broad external environment, pick an industry that suits you best, and then form a strategy. Then you develop and get the assets you need, workers, money, whatever you need for this business model to work. And then you implement the strategy through the strengths that you've gained from your resources. So outside-in approach, completely different from the resource-based model, but they're one and the same. I like to compare them as a road, and it doesn't matter which side of the road you start on, the resource-based side or the industrial organizational side. You're still going to cross paths in the road, and you're going to have, it's the same road. You're just starting on a different end, and you're going to end up on the same side of it. You'll see what I mean here in a second. So there's a few assumptions that go along with the organizational model that are very important, and some hold true and some not true, or some usually hold true but not always, and then some hardly ever hold true but they act like they hold true. So the first assumption of the industrial organizational model would be that the environment imposes pressures and constraints on actions of a firm. So that's basically like saying the government or any surrounding environment can propose constraints. They could limit what resources we have, what we can and can't do, basically, in a sense, and that's very true, I believe. So the second's that firms competing within an industry or industry segment control similar resources and implement similar strategies. This is also true. You look at the cell phone manufacturing industry and you see Apple and Samsung, for example. They basically just copy each other's ideas. One comes out with a new idea. Apple, for say, comes out with a higher retina camera, a better display, or glass all the way around. So Samsung does the same thing, and vice versa.
Why do you think that Apple is so much better though?
Just because their brand, the brand name, the way they just market themselves is just unbelievable, and because they're more innovative in a sense if they have other products. I mean, Samsung has TVs and stuff. Don't get me wrong, but compared to Apple's revolutionary changing devices that they've created, such as the iPod, iPad, iMac now, and most notably the iPhone, is just different. It was your truest form and first form of an actual smartphone.
That's what I was about to say. Do you think it's because
so much more advanced than anything that had came before it?
Do you think it's just because they do everything first, basically?
Yeah, but Samsung,
Or
a
most
lot of people
things.
disagree that Samsung does a lot of the things first, and Apple kind of just gets their design and gets
that's
their
true.
idea or their camera and stuff like this as far as pixels and megabytes and stuff, and they kind of copy that or try to make it just a little better, and they're able to produce it faster from their factories and for not cheaper, but the way they market it, they're able to sell their products and just drive. Basically, I mean, you know, you have an iPhone. You've had both, right?
Yeah.
I've had both as well. Which do you prefer?
The iPhone and
the one you have now.
And I used to talk crap about it.
And it's
really.
more user friendly. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's the reason it's so easy.
It's capable of much more than a Samsung, in my opinion. Now, others have different opinions, and other phones are great, but I'm just biased towards Apple. I've had both, and Apple's definitely superior. But that's what I mean by similar resources and implementing similar strategies within an industry.
Mm-hmm.
They do that, and that brings us into the next one. Resources use and implement strategy or mobile across firms, so competitive advantage is short-lived. So that goes in the same sense that they're mobile across each industry, say the car manufacturing industry now. Someone does something, they make a new eco-friendly truck. 1 year later, GM and Ford also adapted the whatever eco-friendly truck, or just methods like that that are easily mobile and easy, or safety features within a vehicle would be another example. Just things that are easy to implement and not rare, basically. When you get something rare as a company is when you really have a strong competitive advantage. So this is true. A lot of times these advantages are short-lived. That's with marketing tactics too, like online sales. Something's working in a marketing, and then somebody else imposes that same strategy, and then sooner or later everybody has the same strategy, and they're trying to do it. Real estate, everybody's trying to sell a house the same way. You got to do something different. You gotta figure out a way to be competitive and get that advantage. So that's true. And then this is probably the least true, and the one that everybody wants you to believe is true, is that organizational decision makers must be committed to the firm's interest and all interests associated with the shareholders. So that's basically like saying the CEO cares about everybody. That's the model everybody wants to portray, and sometimes that is true. But he has a lot more to worry about than each individual customer.
Yeah.
On a smaller firm or in a smaller company, that may be easier. Stuff like we do, and even what I do with some of the contracting and stuff. I'm dealing one-on-one. I'm not going through 10 employees, but eventually we will. So it will get harder to care about each person, and they want you to think that they do, but really...
And it's not that you don't care.
You don't have the time for... You got to figure out what's a necessity.
You just can't tend to every need. You care about everything, but you just can't tend to everything.
Exactly.
Yourself.
So that's the 4 assumptions. Most hold true, and all hold true in a sense, but some can also be not true, like the example right there of the organizational decision makers. But that'll bring me into the resource-based model. So we already told you about the industrial-based model where they start external. The resource-based model likes to start internal. They like to see what they have. So they begin with identifying the resources that they have, and they study their resources' strengths and weaknesses. So they quickly find out what they have. They determine the capabilities that the resources have that are better than their competition. So they figure that out first of all. What do I got, and what can they do that's going to benefit me or benefit the company as a whole? Then they can form that competitive advantage to outperform their competitors. So they get all these resources. They get similar together, similar strengths, and they get the similar weaknesses, and they work on things, and they form the competitive advantage. Then they locate the industry. So in step 4 of the information model, they've already picked their industry and they find their resources. Here in the resource-based model, you pick your industry in step 4, almost last. So you don't know what industry you're going to pick. You just know what you have and what they're good at, and you align these people and mold them into a strong business model.
Almost like you're like starting like you're a coach and you're starting a team, it seems like.
Yeah, that's a good example of it. But basically, you already know what you have, and you just got to figure out how to put it all together.
Yeah.
So that can be easier in a sense for a lot of people, and I like that approach a little more. I'm a little more biased to that approach, but a traditional approach is usually the industrial organization model. But anyways, after you get your strategies and you finally pick an industry, then you implement the strategy, same as step 5 in the other model. You just implement it and you go about with it. So that's the resource-based model and the industrial-based model, two completely different things, and end up being, like I mentioned earlier, the same road, the same path towards getting a good business model and structure figured out, good analysis. So that brings me into the next form of analysis, and this goes back to the external, similar to the industrial organization, where you're looking into broader factors that implement things into your business or that can constrain you. And there's an acronym used for this called the PESTEL. And this is used in the macro general level of external analysis. And the P in PESTEL stands for political. This can be your government policy, foreign trade policies, anything that your president imposes that can affect your industry. Then the next is the economical approach, the E. This can be exchange rates, interest rates, other factors that are government associated. Then that brings you to your social. This is dealing with person-to-person interaction. Population growth in a certain industry like real estate would be a good one to look at, population growth within an industry. Age distribution would be good for like determining in marketing which age group or which nomination and all that you're trying to reach with your message.
Yeah, depending on like what you're talking about or what your product is or whatever.
Yep, so you'd be able to age distribute through the social level. Then technological is the T. That's any technological change. We're starting to see great advancement in technology. We're starting to see artificial intelligence, which is a little scary, but if you don't know what that is, that's in a sense robots or jobs that are being fulfilled by computers and different technological methods that aren't human based. So basically a computer stealing jobs is what it is, and it could be a good thing, and it is going to be a good thing, but it could get bad quick, and we'll get way deep into that in some other shows because that's a big topic we like, and we think that and virtual reality is going to be a big shift here in the 21st century. We're gonna see some crazy things. So environmental is the next D in the PESTEL, and that's your weather, climate change. How could that affect? If you're a plant like Frank works in, you got to account for how many rain delays there's going to be every year. You got to account for days that it's going to be too cold to work in certain areas. If you're a global company, you're going to have to take into a lot of different aspects. And then legal, which is one of your most important and last, the L in PESTEL. That's employment laws, discrimination laws, just any kind of laws that deal with.
There's probably just thousands of those.
And you got to follow them by the book. Very, very important.
Wow.
That's a very important topic. And that's the 5 PESTEL to analyze your industry from an external perspective, a very broad. So that's political, economical, social, technological, environmental, and legal. So that's the 5 forces there. Then that brings us into the actual 5 forces, which is called the Porter's 5 forces. It's a tool for analyzing competition of a business. So it basically shows you what industry is good to jump in and what barriers there are exactly in that industry. So there's 5 different barriers or 5 different forces. The internal force is the industry competitors and the intensity of rivalry. Everything else revolves around this. So how competitive is that industry? What are you going to have to deal with? Are you going to have to deal with Apple and Samsung? Or are you going to have to deal with Tesla and Ford and GM if you want to hop into a more broad industry or even something small?
So do you think that for sure electric gasoline vehicles will go away eventually?
I'm not too sure about that, but that is the goal, and I don't think they'll ever go away completely because you got to look at it. Back in the day, there were so many emissions and stuff. There was no emissions. Like on old hot rod 69, I think in 67, they really made a big change there in emissions. And if you had a car that was pre that, you have a nice hopped up motor and all that, and you still get to keep it. But in certain states like California that are very liberal, very democratic, they will have emissions on this and not let you have those kind of vehicles. So states like that for sure will eventually be all electric.
Yeah.
The U.S. as a whole,
Not necessarily the whole.
the U.S. as a whole, I think could also, but you'll always have gas vehicles and combustion engines,
Yeah.
no matter what. But that is the goal, and that would be the best thing, sustainable and just better for the environment, really. Less pollution, less everything with all electric. And that's a weird view to have, but
I mean, if it's efficient, I don't see why not, you know?
And it is efficient. And then he's working on so many other things. Like, he wants not only the cars, because that'd be the first step, which he's already implemented. He wants the 18-wheelers.
Well, I just seen a video of him talking
rockets,
about
reusable rockets.
Talking about solar power could cure all of China's power problems. Solar
That'd be
power.
crazy. And I love how he's focused not only on just us, just our problems. He wants to change the world, and that's really what you should do.
Yeah.
I salute Elon Musk. I love Elon Musk. He's definitely my top 3, no doubt about it. So that's the 5 forces models. The intensity of rivalry is your centerpiece. Then you have to worry about your bargaining power of your buyers and the bargaining power of your suppliers, which are on different sides of the model. So with the buyers, you have to make sure your buyers are cost effective, like you have products to substitute, and just there's a lot that goes with bargaining power of buyers. You don't want your buyers or your suppliers to have too much power. You want to have control over your buyers, and you want to also have control over your suppliers. If they get too much control over you and something goes bad, then you're just, no other way to put it, you're shit out of luck. And there's a lot that goes with that. There's threats of forward integration by firms in each industry. And this is getting deep. A lot of you may not understand some of this, so I'm going to go quick on this. This is a real in-depth, the Porter's 5. And then you also have the threat of new entrants and the threat of substitutes. So you have to worry about new people entering your market and stealing your idea, essentially, or implementing the same strategies as you. And you also have the threat of substitutes. Stuff that people can do for cheaper, or they could do it cheaper in a third world country and make it just as good as you. So there's a lot that goes into the Porter's model there. And that's basically, we'll leave it at that. So that's a good bit. Last thing I'll state is the VRIN is what I call it, the VRIN method. Characteristics of a core competence. Good company should be 4 different things. It's another acronym. The V, valuable. R, rare. I, inimitable. Costly to imitate, basically. It's hard to replicate. N, non-substitutable. So if your company has all 4 of that, or even if you only have 3, it's not going to work the same. You need the third and most important, the inimitable, because that revolves around your time. Your time will become everything in business and is very essential. So I'll leave it at that. I hope y'all enjoyed that and got a little out of the industrialization model and the resource-based model. And we'll give a quick shout out to Legend Gear and Apparel. That's our sponsor. Check them out at legendgear.co. Good business apparel products and accessories. They have wallets, ties, phone cases, watches, all kinds of gears. Check them out on Instagram at Legend Gear Apparel. Also check out the podcast Instagram at Legends Never Die Podcast 1. And check out the YouTube channel, Legends Never Die Podcast 1. So go check us out. Y'all have a good day. Hope I taught y'all something here.